Okay, let's get started, huh? You guys are on time, we'll get started. So, hey, welcome to District 4 Tournament Umpire Orientation Overview Meeting. It's something we do every year in advance of the tournaments. One for the international tournament, we're required to do this by the tournament organization, that we make sure that umpires are who are assigned to tournament games understand tournament rules and procedures. Then we just extend that to TOC and to our future stars to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So we're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation. I want to caution folks that there's a lot of content to the PowerPoint. The actual PowerPoint will be posted on the District 4 website tomorrow. And this meeting is being recorded, and we'll post the recording on our YouTube channel as soon as we have the opportunity to get it all processed and ready to go. So even for those of you who are experienced umpires or experienced tournament participants, some of this might be repetition. You may be asking, why do I have to do this every year? Well, things do change, and there's new points of emphasis. So, just recognize some things may look like repetition from prior seasons. Our goal is to get you out of here before the sun comes up in the morning, so we'll be good. All right, so we're going to start in with our PowerPoint here. Okay, so as I said, welcome. This is a discussion of tournament umpire responsibilities for the 2024 tournaments. And you can see on the slide the 4 pin designs that we have for our tournaments, the tournament champions, the baseball and softball all-star tournaments, and the future stars tournaments. Just a quick summary, why are we doing this training, right? Prepare us all for the postseason. We're going to talk about umpire procedures, how the umpires are to act before, during, and after games. We're going to talk about specific points of emphasis for tournaments, and then playing rule variations from regular season. So I'm going to cover umpire procedures, points of emphasis. Jim Rhodes is going to cover playing rules. And we're going to hand off back and forth. So let's go back to this. As we said, this meeting's being recorded. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat function and send it to Jim, and we'll get our questions answered after each major section. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on organization, but sometimes it's good to remember what Tournament Champions is. This is a district-run tournament, independent of Little League Internationals tournament, and we offer it at 7 levels of play. It's open to every league in the district to send their representatives, typically their champion, at all these levels of play in baseball and softball. And I see missing off of here is junior baseball. So there's actually 8 levels of play. Sorry about that. And this tournament's been going on for a long time. We have on here 50 years, at least 50 years. The district's been in existence since 1958. So TOC could have been in existence for 60 years or so. The All-Star Tournament, another important thing to recognize. Although we run the games here in District 4, the tournament is run out of Williamsport by the tournament director. The tournament director is Pat Wilson, who just yesterday was appointed as the new president of Little League International. But Pat's the tournament director, and the tournament's run under those strict guidelines that are laid out in the rule book related to how the tournaments are organized and executed. So again, while we play the games locally, decisions often get made somewhere beyond us. And we'll talk about a few examples of that as we go through the presentation. It's an all volunteer program. I think all of you in the leagues know it takes volunteers to run the games locally in terms of field prep, scorekeeping, announcing, all those activities. And then we have volunteer umpires. Double elimination format, multiple age groups. And eventually the winner here can, if they keep winning, can move on to Northern California. And the winners of Northern California go to regional tournaments. And the international tournament, its current structure has been in place since 1947. So been around a while. Future Stars. This is a limited participation tournament. We only have a few leagues who are participating. Played at 2 age groups, 11U. So that means any players who are league age 11 or younger can be on a team. And then there's another division for 9U, players who are 9 or younger. So we could have, 8, 9-year-olds on the 11U team, and we could have, 8, 9-year-olds on the 9U team. This is a special games tournament run by District 4. We set the rules and the organization. What about the umpires for all these tournaments? So all of you who are umpires, you represent California District 4. You're not going to be a local league umpire. Please do not wear your local league affiliation umpire uniform. We'll talk about uniforms later. We need you to look like the California 4 umpire. And if you're a high school or some other association umpire, don't wear that. Take pride that you're part of Little League. It's a great opportunity to be involved in these tournaments as an umpire, and put your best example forward as you come to the games. And then leave no question about being impartial. You may be assigned to a game where a team from your league is participating. We need you to be totally impartial. So that means things like don't socialize with friends, or you may know the managers or coaches from games during the season. Well, during the tournament games, you might know them. You can be friendly, but don't go overboard to socialize, right? So you are a member of the District 4 volunteer umpire crews. Who is an eligible tournament umpire? These are the guidelines that are established by the Little League International Tournament Committee. We don't establish these requirements. We have some flexibility in TOC and Future Stars. We'll talk about those exceptions later, but an eligible tournament umpire, especially for All-Star Tournament, you must be an approved volunteer for your local league. There's a specific procedure that each league must go through to meet the Little League expectations, to make sure that those who are serving in a role that is in responsible care of our players and interacting with other volunteers, that those have been endorsed by the board of directors. So that means they know who you are. In the old days, in a small Little League, you all knew each other. It was a small town. Now we don't have that, but make sure that you have been approved by your local league. If you're an adult, that means you've had a background check performed and approved by the home league. Some leagues are also meeting the California legal requirement around fingerprinting. The message here is make sure you've been approved by your home league. Some of you umpire for multiple leagues. Need to make sure that you have been approved in those volunteer roles. We expect that you've done regular season for your league. You just don't show up for the tournament time and take all the really nice games. We hope that you've been a participant during the season. Some leagues use tournament umpiring as a reward for their regular season umpires, recognition, providing advancement opportunities. So that's why it's important that you're a regular season umpire. You should have experience umpiring at the division you're going to be assigned to. That means you know the skill level of players at that level. You know the kinds of things that happen. You know the difference between baseball and softball. Working knowledge of the District 4 umpire mechanics. We're going to show you a little bit later about where to find this, but the league has new standard mechanics for multiple umpire crews, more than 2 umpires. And District 4 has some published mechanics for 2 and 3 umpire crews. We expect that you're using those mechanics. If your crew wants to do something different, that's fine, but the next game you might not be assigned with your umpires from your league. You should also have completed all the required training that Little League requires of their volunteers. This is just a laundry list. You can find these training requirements on the District 4 website, or you can talk to your league safety officer or your league chief umpire about these requirements. You've also, you must agree not to accept cash payments to umpire games in the tournament. So in the international tournament, all umpires are volunteers. That's a written policy of Little League International. For adults who are expecting in the future to go to regional or World Series, you absolutely cannot accept cash payments for any Little League game. But in the tournament, it's a specific mandate for all umpires. Now, there are some exceptions. If you're a youth umpire and your league has been paying you during the regular season, your league may have some modifications to how they handle that during the tournaments to avoid direct cash payments. Might be things like equipment or other non-cash equivalents. And then your league chief umpire and president needed to recommend you. Most all I have those recommendations already. So congratulations and welcome to the crew. All right, let's move on to points of emphasis for TOC and all-star umpires. What are we going to talk about in this section? These are some things that we know from past experience are areas that we must focus on to make sure that the umpire role in the tournaments is effective and that we're supportive of making sure the games go ahead in a proper fashion. So we're just going to jump in as kind of a laundry list of items, and please ask questions through the chat function with Jim. So you're going to arrive at the game. And so before the game, what are the expectations? I just want to say that to a great extent, most of these are expectations that we already have during the regular season, and they're just more emphasis during All-Stars. However, let's just start prior to the game. You show up. There's only the manager and 2 coaches allowed on the field. So how does this actually happen? Let's say the team show up an hour before the game. The tournament director will review the paperwork and for the teams to determine who's the manager and 2 coaches. And only then will they let the teams go on the field. No other adults or other coaches, whoever should be on the field except for those 3, the manager and 2 coaches. So you as the umpires might arrive, say 20, 25 minutes before the game. So if you see that something has changed, just let the tournament director know. Coaches may warm up the pitchers anytime, anywhere, no protective equipment required. Regular season rule, right? Well, this only applies to TOC and Future Stars. Jim will talk a little bit more about some of these restrictions, but remember, if you see an adult in an all-star game warming up a pitcher, they need to stop. And it's different than regular season. There's going to be confusion. Again, pregame. Players with bats must wear batting helmets in warm-ups. So just think about this. If you see a player with their bat in their hand, or you see a player around others with bats in their hands, they must be wearing a batting helmet. One of the nearby leagues down in Livermore had a situation in the last 2 weeks where a player was hit with a swinging bat in the head when he was not wearing a batting helmet. in a warm-up area. We just can't afford to have those kinds of injuries when we can prevent them. The managers and coaches are going to get this same message, but again, as umpires, it's our responsibility to stop things from happening. Consistent with this, so we have a player who's acting as the catcher, or the player who's catching throws coming in for infield or outfield practice. They must be wearing a catching helmet. Why is this? We have that coach with a swinging bat, okay? And we also have the ball coming in. So we have multiple potential areas of injury if that player is distracted. The worst thing that can happen is the throw can take the catcher towards the coach who's swinging a bat, and now we've got two potential problems. Okay, and then anybody warming up a pitcher must have the helmet with the dangling throat guard. Of course, that's the rule. That's the regular season rule. So what happens when the game starts, right? Again, only the manager and two coaches are allowed. That means that they can't be going back and forth to the stands. There's not somebody coming in helping them out. There's just three. That's it, maximum. And one adult must be in the dugout at all times. Just going to talk about this a little bit. So think about the games that you've done when the team is on offense. So two adults are out in the coaches' boxes, and we have one adult in the dugout whose primary responsibility is supervising young people. That's the coach's primary responsibility. And what do they do instead of their primary responsibility? For some reason, that dugout coach wants to come out and pick up loose bats. They want to come out, or let's say it's the manager who's in the dugout. They want to come out and make substitutions, talk to the umpire. They want to do all kinds of things except supervise the dugout. So just be aware of that. If the manager is in the dugout and they have their coaches in the coach's box, the manager wants to come out and talk to you as the umpire, remind the manager that, hey, have one of your base coaches, whichever is closest to the dugout, to go over to the dugout area and supervise the dugout while you're out of the dugout. During the game, again, in TLC and Future Star, just like regular season, coaches can warm up a pitcher. But in All-Stars, no. It's a kids' game. In All-Stars, we're not having coaches warming up pitchers. Coaches and managers must be inside the dugout during live action. Well, when is live action? That's after play has started, right? For an inning. So there are some fields that have a ground rule that says the coach can sit outside the dugout at the far end to relay signals to their pitcher or players. Do not allow that. The rules say coaches and managers must be in the dugout. If they're outside the dugout, now all of a sudden we've got equipment and another person who can interfere with live action. Again, point of emphasis during the game. Now we've got this transition between one team has made the third out, they're going into bat. The team that was batting is going out to go on defense. We have this situation where warm-ups are happening, and then we've got the change of the coaching boxes. During the regular season, you may have been very lenient on this. You may have let a coach wander around outside the dugout or wander to the coach's box. Or what I often see in regular season is the coach will come out and they'll go around to the other coaching area, but they're just going to hang out by the dugout and talk to their friend who happens to be a coach on the opposing team. No, we need the coaches to stay in the dugout, and you make a decision what in the dugout means. But before they go to take their coaching position. our recommendation is when the catcher throws the ball down on the final pitch of warmups, or when you announce as the umpire, I need a batter, or if you add to that, hey, I'm batter and coaches, something like that, so they get the clear message. Why is this a rule? Again, it's a safety situation. Many of you may have seen a coach who's standing in the coaching box while infield practice is going on, and they're looking over to the opposing team's dugout, chatting away with their friend. And here comes the wild throw across the field. And now we have a coach who's concussed from getting hit in the head with a thrown ball. Just keep them back at their dugout. Gates have to be closed if they have them. And most importantly, again, we're not handling bats in the dugout. The rules are specific. The bats can only be in the hand of the batter coming up as they're coming to bat, or in the 50-70 intermediate, junior, senior, softball, baseball levels, when they're coming out to be the on-deck batter. Got a couple again, don't do things. Managers, coaches, and players should not be talking to people outside the dugout. The rules actually say, you know, they're not to fraternize with people outside the dugout. Some say this goes back to old time days, and it's just a rule that exists for no good reason. I mean, be reasonable here, but if play calling is being passed between spectators and the dugout, or they have a scorebook outside the dugout who's telling them information, tell them to stop. Tell the manager, hey, you can't be talking. Let the tournament director know, and have the tournament director deal with the spectators, and you deal with the dugout. How do I keep this game moving? My goal is 90 minutes for a 6-inning game. It's doable. How do we make that happen? Give them no more than 1 minute between innings. That's how it's done. And 1 minute starts when the third out is made in the last inning. It's really interesting to me that even though in the case of tournaments in TOC and Future Stars and in regular season, we've allowed the coach to come out to warm up the pitcher. Still, the coaches in the dugout are not doing anything to help the catcher get their equipment on. So the way to fix this is after the first inning, they're taking a long time. Remind the manager, you get 1 minute. And then in the second inning, when they take a minute and a half, end the warm-ups, stand there and wait for the catcher to come out. That's how we make sure we speed the game up. Communication. I'll say that cell phones are really not allowed on the field unless you're a first responder and you need to be in direct contact for some response process, or you're in the dugout keeping score on an app like Game Changer. Accessing the rule book in the dugout is acceptable. But if the manager brings you a rule book on his phone onto the field, I guess you just need to decide what you're going to do about that. The way we handle this is if you see a cell phone on the field, say in the coach's box or other places, remind that coach that, hey, communicating using your cell phone is not allowed. Keep it in your pocket. The next time I see you with it, you know, I'm going to have to remove you from the game. All right. Equipment inspection. Not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'm hoping that all of you have done equipment inspection throughout the regular season. The rules require that we ensure that all equipment meets standards at the beginning of the game. So we're going to check bats, And one thing I want you to be looking for in bats at the upper levels are, I say, sticky substances. The rules say pine tar or similar adhesive substance. If you grab a bat and there's something on it that looks funny and your hand sticks to it, that bat's illegal and needs to be removed. Please check for dented and cracked equipment. It's out there. We don't want to have something come apart during the game. Batting helmets. It'd be unlikely you'll find a batting helmet that's not manufactured in accordance with the NOC standard. Might be, but it's unlikely. We're going to look for excessive decals, stickers, painting. What are we going to see in the way of stickers? You're going to see teams with whatever other program that helmet's being used to play a game in with those stickers all over the helmet. So the guidelines are 20% of helmet surface. You make your judgment on whether there's too many stickers. Damaged helmets, torn padding, missing screws, and that the C-flap cheek guard is the same manufacturer. Hopefully you've been doing this during the regular season. Catcher's gear, kind of the same thing we're looking for. Importantly, to make sure there's a dangling throat guard and that all the equipment's in good repair. If you find something in TOC, Future Stars, or All Stars, if you find any equipment at your pregame inspection, you can, if the coach may ask you, well, can I fix it? I guess you can say, yeah, fix it and bring it back to me. What I would prefer is tell them, go get your tool and fix it while I'm watching. So, and I only have like 3 minutes to watch you fix it, coach. The better way is take the equipment out and tell them the next game, it'll be fixed before the next game, right, coach? Take out that equipment, give it to the tournament director who will take care of it during the game. I'm not going to talk much about bat standards. I think everyone knows important things are USA baseball bat standards are in place for Little League Baseball, intermediate. BB Core standards for teenage baseball levels are acceptable. Softball, everything must be a softball bat with a BPF of 1.2. The good thing is if we follow these standards, you see a bat that's properly marked, you can have confidence it's not going to exceed the size or length limits that are shown here, because these limits are all linked to manufacturer standards as well. Okay, one other important point of emphasis I want to talk about is lineup changes. And since at the lower levels, we're going to have continuous batting order, Jim will talk about that. We really don't have offensive changes unless there's an injury or some other situation. If you're doing senior softball or senior baseball, they do bat 9 players, and you will have offensive changes that you need to keep track of. And defensive changes are made when the player's entering the field. So to the extent of what you're going to keep track, you're going to have a lineup card, right? Some of you may have kept lineup cards during the regular season. Some of you may not. Keep track of pitching changes, very important. You might even go to the point of, as the pitching change occurs, ask the scorekeeper, what was the pitch count for that pitcher, and write it on your lineup card. And catcher changes, because there's limits on catchers moving to pitcher and then pitchers moving to catchers. So we need to know when catchers are coming in and out of the game. Again, we talked about substitutions at the senior level, special pinch runners at the senior level. And then there's offensive timeout limitations of 1 per inning and defensive visits to each pitcher. So we should note those somewhere. So if there's a question, we have a good record of those. There's some details about what happens with pitchers at the higher levels, about being able to return. We need to keep track of that. This is a limited situation that applies only to certain levels of play. So I don't want to talk too much about this, but just know that pitchers who come off the mound can return back to the mound at certain teenage divisions. We're going to have a continuous batting order tracking sheet that the scorekeepers will keep, because even at the in TFC there's mandatory play requirements, so the scorekeeper will be keeping track of which players are actually out on defense. This is not something that you need to be concerned about. It's a way for us to track, to ensure that mandatory play is happening with continuous batting order. So I kind of talked already a little bit about keeping the game moving. I just want to emphasize this again. We should have very quick games. Games are going to start on the weekdays at 5:30. If we have a game, there's no time limits. So if we have a game that goes 3 hours, it's going to be dark. No one wants to have a suspended game for some reason. Please, as the umpires, limit the time in between innings to 1 minute. 1 minute. Game action. I already talked about this. Don't let the base coach come out and get bats. They may say, "Oh, well, I'm doing it quickly." No, while that base coach is coming out of their coaching box, the batter is standing there waiting to get the signal from that same coach. Don't tell the coach stop. Go to the manager. Make the manager responsible for instructing their coaches and players. And don't have coaches running down foul balls, bringing them back into the game. Foul balls should come to you, and they should come to you in a controlled fashion. And if you have substitutions, they need to be given to you promptly. The sooner we move the game along to the next inning, we're going to get through the 6 or 7 innings or whatever the game requirements are. And we're going to have more fun for the players as well. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about working with managers and coaches. So if you're an umpire and your goal is to eject as many game participants as possible, let me know, because we don't want to assign you to any of our games. Sorry if that sounds a little harsh, but the goal is to have a game that goes along and all the participants are doing their job. So managers, coaches, and umpires, we all have duties during the game. So please recognize that each of those roles is different, but equal in terms of 3 teams being on the field. And where we might think that a manager gets their authority just by being the manager, well, you don't get your authority just because somebody announced you as the umpire before the game. Earn responsibility on the field. How do we do that? Learn the names of the manager. When you have the plate meeting, write the first name down on the lineup card. Call the manager by their name. And if they call you by, "Hey, Blue," remind the manager, "Hey, my name is Don." "Hey, Bob, my name is Don." Right? And we're not shouting across the field. So there's a difference in being loud and effective in messaging to game participants. So it's a loud environment at a game. There's lots of cheering going on, yelling, screaming from spectators, cheering and softball. You might have to have, an elevated voice, but that's not shouting. Shouting is disrespectful. So, and don't let anybody shout back at you. In terms of working with managers, again, treat them with the respect that they deserve, as long as they're acting respectfully. If they have a question, walk up to them, meet them halfway. And most importantly, my advice is ask them the first thing you say when they come up. Bob, what is your question? Why do we ask you to recommend you use that phrase? Because then that will help them in their mind. They will clarify what their concern is and they will be responsive. If they don't come back with a question, now you have the opportunity to, hey, Bob, I understand, but what is your question? And if they don't have a question, guess what? Bob, I guess your questions are answered. Go on, we're going to get the game going. Don't look for problems. What do I mean by problems? Little things that happen that might not be consistent with all the rules of the game, but they don't impact exactly what's happening right now. Things you could fix in between innings. Don't be that umpire that yells across the field at something that is not really important to that action. Number 5 here is don't coach. Leave that to the manager. Very important. A pitcher's doing something improper, for example, stop the pitcher, ask the manager to come out and explain to the manager why what the pitcher's doing is improper. Probably the easier way to do that is to just call the violation during the game. At 60-foot baseball, there's very few things, for example, that a pitcher does that's a violation, even though it may not be good pitching practice. That's an example. But please don't coach players. Don't really talk to players. Don't touch the players. Let the manager have all those responsibilities. Ejection. I opened this page with saying, hey, if you want to eject everybody, you're in the wrong place. Think about this. The team is made up of 12 to 15 players, 3 adult coaches. So now we've removed a manager, or we removed a player. Might have been in your mind, a good reason for ejection. That player has missed the opportunity of playing in an all-star game for something that may or may not have been really worthy of ejection. So be very cautious. And then if we removed an adult, now we've taken away one key leader off of the team, someone who can influence the game participants in learning and having experience. Not suggesting you do not eject when there's an unsportsmanlike act or some other situation that requires it, but generally, my experience says there are certain individuals in a game who eject themselves, and you will know who they are. If you pick to eject someone who hasn't recognized they're at the point of ejection, we've probably gone too far. All right. What do I do about things happening off the field? The spectators are unruly or unsafe. We recently had a game at one of our leagues where the police were called because there was a fight in the stands. What do? We handle what goes on inside the fence. The tournament director deals with stuff outside the fence. But if situations, the game situation with stuff going on is such that we can't play, stop the game, put the teams in the dugout, tell the managers why you have stopped the game, let the TD know why you've stopped the game, and let the tournament director handle that dysfunctional activity. And don't restart the game until it's safe to do so. That's Rule 901G. It's powerful. It's good to use when situations are out of control. Okay, Jim, do we have questions?
Uh, excuse me. Yes, we have a few. Are coaches not allowed to warm up pitchers and all stars both in pregame and during the game?
That's correct. Cannot warm up pitchers
Okay.
in all-stars.
Okay. Are coaches given the points of emphasis that you just went through ahead of the tournament, so they should be aware of the enforcement when necessary?
You want to answer that, Jim?
Yes. Yes, they are given these. All the managers and coaches they have a mandatory meeting they have to attend, TOC baseball or all-star baseball or TOC and all-star softball. And at each of those meetings, we have a PowerPoint and we have these exact same slides in them. So they know ahead of time. So I would say, yes, they know it. And if they don't know it, they weren't at the meetings. So be courteous, but be firm, enforce them.
And I would add to that again, remember, 90% of these are things that apply during regular season. So it should not be surprise to our managers and coaches. Okay.
We have one more question. Are teams and parents allowed to play music between innings and or at bat walk-ups?
So that's been a point of discussion, Jim. Do we have that totally clarified?
I don't think we do.
Well, I understand the question. I have my opinions about that. We've raised this as a concern to our district administrator, and before the tournament, we will get this resolved, and we'll share that with all the tournament umpires.
Okay, those are our questions, Don.
Okay, Jim, I think we're going to move into tournament playing rules, right?
Okay, can you stop your screen sharing so I can pick up mine?
If I can figure out how to do it. Okay.
Okay, has everybody seen this slide? Good. Okay, so we're going to go through Tournament of Champions, All Stars, and Future Stars. So what we're going to do we're going to start with Tournament of Champions playing rules and conditions. So TOC games, unless they're noted in the District 4 interleague rules, and here are played under Little League official playing rules and regulations. We do not allow any kind of local rules. If a particular league plays under a particular set of rules, we do not allow that in TOC. We also do not allow any manager agreements. The ground rules for fields do apply, and they must be reviewed at the plate meeting. Essentially, what we do is we go by the District 4 interleague rules. So these are the divisions. I think Don went through those earlier. And so where do we find the TOC baseball and softball playing rules? Well, again, we generally go by the interleague rules. So where do you find the interleague rules? Go to the California District 4 Little League website. You should have this bookmarked. If you don't already, please do it. And there you'll see on the side Little League Baseball, Teenage Baseball, and Softball. So you just click on one of those and it will take you to that site. This is the Teenage Baseball Big Diamond. And if you look where that red arrow is, it shows Teenage Baseball rules. So that's for intermediate, juniors, and juniors. We don't have seniors up there. If you're playing the small diamond, any kind of minor baseball or little or majors, uh, go to the teenage baseball and then 60-foot diamond rules, and that has both minors and majors. And if you're doing softball, click on the softball side there in the green, and it'll take you to this page, and it'll show you the interleague rules for AAA softball. You'll see a lot of times that in TOC, it's just listed as minor softball. Whenever we talk about minor softball in TOC, we play by AAA softball rules, not AA. You'll see the major softball and senior softball rules there, and also pitching rules for all of the divisions. So I'm going to go through some rules, excuse me, and the following rules, except noted by exception, they apply to all of TOC, both baseball and softball and all divisions of play. So consider that they apply to everything unless we say otherwise. So, number of adult coaches may have up to 3 adults, a manager and 2 coaches. And know that that manager and 2 coaches, their names are on a roster signed by the league president, and only those 3 may be on the game. Number of players, you can begin or continue a game with 8 or more players. If you drop below that, the game has to come to an end. Foot in the batter's box. This is going to be enforced at all levels except for AAA softball. And hopefully you've been enforcing this all season. I will tell you the easy thing about this is just think of it this way. If a pitch comes in and the catcher catches the ball in flight, if the batter does not swing and the pitcher stays around the mound or the circle area, in softball, they must stay in the circle area. In baseball, they must stay within an area. In majors, it's about 6 or 8 feet in front of the plate. They can come that far, but if they're walking halfway up to home plate, you cannot enforce a foot in the batter's box. Same way, if a batter swings, you cannot enforce foot in the batter's box. Third strike not caught, it's for majors and above in both baseball and softball. Courtesy runner, it's allowed in all divisions of baseball and softball except for AAA softball. Make sure about this. This is important. A couple of things here. One is that if you use a courtesy runner, it must be with a continuous batting order. It must be the last out. If it's for senior softball, it must be a player on the bench. It must be for the pitcher or catcher of record. What that means is the pitcher or catcher who caught the last half inning, not who will be pitcher or catcher the next inning, but who was the pitcher or catcher. The second very important thing to remember about this is if a batter is batting for the very first time, they must be allowed to run the bases. They cannot be replaced with a courtesy runner. Special pinch runner, this is for senior softball only. Since we have so few games here and so few of us are doing those games, I'm not going to go into any kind of detail about that rule. Stealing of signs, intermediate and junior baseball, and major and senior softball. So this is considered unsportsmanlike conduct. If you see it, for example, a player out at second base giving a signal of, oh, the catcher is lining up high, trying to send a signal to the batter, immediately stop it. Give a warning. If it happens again, then you must eject for that. Can you enforce that in AAA softball, minor baseball? Yes, you can. There, I would say, just get them to stop it. Batting order, In baseball, all levels, it's going to be continuous batting order. In softball and AAA and majors, continuous batting order. In seniors, we are batting 9. Mandatory play. So we are very serious about this in Little League. We're very serious about this in the regular season. We're very serious about this in TOC. And it can lead to a team being disqualified. So every player must have at least 1 at bat and 6 defensive outs. In minor baseball and all levels of softball, we have 5-run innings, a limit of 5 runs per half inning. That's in minor baseball, and it's in all levels of softball. And at those levels, if you have a 5-run inning, that is considered the equivalent of 3 defensive outs. In senior softball, intermediate and junior baseball, if you have a team that has a roster of 15 or more players, and at least 15 of those players show up and are eligible to play in the game, mandatory play is dropped to 1 at bat and 3 defensive outs. I know we have one senior softball team that's rostered at 17. Mandatory play. This just confirms that when a player is appearing offensively for the first time in the game, they must step in the batter's box. How do you get an at bat? You step in the batter's box with no count, and you must remain in the game until one of the following occurs. You're retired as a batter. For example, you're struck out, or you're retired as a batter runner or a runner. You're thrown out at first base, or you get to first base and then you're thrown out trying to steal second, or you reach base and score, or you reach base and the inning ends. So what this means is that when you're batting for the first time, you cannot be removed from that batter's box. And if you get on base, you cannot be removed for a pinch runner, a special pinch runner, or a courtesy runner. So I would say to you umpires, always, when somebody says, can I have a courtesy runner? If you're not sure if that batter has batted, if that's not their first time, go to the scorekeeper. And when a manager wants to bring in a special pinch runner, ask the scorekeeper, was that the last out? So use the scorekeeper as your friend in these situations. Substitutions. In a continuous batting order, defensive substitutions can be made freely. All the players need is 6 defensive outs at some point during the game. This will be tracked by the manager and scorekeeper. Don showed you that sheet. It is not an umpire responsibility. Do not take it as one of your responsibilities. Substitutions. This is for senior softball only. Any player who's been removed for a substitute may re-enter the game, but only in the same position in the batting order. There aren't exceptions to that. A substitute entering the game for the first time may not be removed. In other words, that starter can't be returned until that sub has met mandatory play. Once the starter and the substitute have met mandatory play, there are free substitutions. You can have one player play defense. You can have one player bat, go back and forth, doesn't matter. You can have more than 2 players in a batting order spot. In a 7-inning game, you can fit about 3 players into one batting order spot. Senior softball only. If a team has no eligible substitutes and you have an injured player, an ill player, or an ejected player, all the subs have been burned. What you do as a umpire is that you go to the opposing manager and you ask them to choose who is on the bench, who they want to come into the game. Run rules. We will be using the 15, 10, and 8-run rules. Probably you've been using these all season. So 15 runs after 3. This is minor and major baseball and minor and major softball. 10 runs after 4 innings, 8 runs after 5 innings. In intermediate and junior baseball, senior softball, just add 1 more inning to that. 15 runs after 4, 10 after 5, 8 after 6. Time limits, there are no time limits. So when you go to the interleague rules, know that those interleague rules is what we will be playing by, except for this one instance. There are no time limits. Any game that a winner cannot be determined shall be resumed at the point of suspension. A regulation AAA softball game, a regulation game is actually 2 innings. Minor and majors games are 4 innings, 5 innings for intermediate baseball and senior softball and above. So what I want to emphasize here is that you want to be, as umpires, very conscious. You're not trying to play until there's that last little bit of light, because it's possible that if you go too far and you have to resume that game, it is a big hassle. What that means is both teams are going to have to show up at the next scheduled game, who would have been the winner of that game. They're going to have to get there at 4 o'clock. They're going to have to complete that game. And then that team is going to have to play in that next game. So be very conscious of that. If you don't think you can get an inning in, don't start the inning. Regulation games called for darkness, weather, or curfew are complete if a winner cannot be determined. If a winner can be determined. If you have a regulation game and is ended by an incomplete inning, the score reverts back to the last completed inning, provided in that partial inning, the visiting team scores 1 or more runs to tie or go ahead, and the home team does not tie the score or take the lead during that incomplete inning. So that's the reason you don't want a game in which you have a visiting team get ahead and then you're trying to complete this game and you can't, and then you revert back. Protests. What are protestable situations? Awarding of bases, rules interpretation. In other words, a manager believes that a coach or that a umpire misinterpreted a rule. MPR, mandatory play violation. Ineligible pitcher or player. What are non-protestable situations? Umpire's judgment, fair, foul, ball, strike. Equipment, ejections, and if the protest occurs after the next pitch or play. So what do you do if you have a manager who comes out and wishes to protest? Do not ever lead the manager on. They are the ones who have to actually say the word protest. Play stops, and the play will only resume when the protest is resolved. Games cannot be played under protest in TOC. Even if that protest is over an umpire's judgment and you know that they can't protest, you must allow the protest to continue. The UIC does not decide what is or is not protestable. So, what if they want to protest? Must be made in accordance with Rule 419. It must be made before the next pitch, play, or attempted play. If a coach protests, what you do is you bring together your umpire crew, you confer, and you make a ruling. If the manager still does not agree with you, then they may continue the protest. The umpire, the crew chief, will report the conditions of the protest to the tournament director. The tournament director will then make a decision. And the tournament director may use a protest committee. They may not. They may just decide on their own. And the tournament director's decision is final. There are no further appeals to be made, and at that point, you immediately resume play. Okay, in TOCs, the following rules apply only to baseball, only to baseball. What kind of baseballs are you going to use? You're going to use RS baseballs. 60-foot diamond, they should be marked Little League. 70 and 90-foot diamond should be marked Senior League. But what if you don't have these baseballs? Use whatever baseballs are provided. We want to have a game. And know that TOC rules are exactly the same as the regular season rule book for pitching. Maximum number of pitches in a day, days of rest, pitching thresholds, consecutive days pitching, etc. All of the regular season rules are the TOC rules, so you don't have to learn anything new. Following rules apply only to softball. When can a player on the base lead off? In the AAA division, the ball must reach the batter or is struck. In the major and senior division, once the pitcher releases the ball during the pitch, at that point, the runner can take a lead. Pitching, this is where you'll find the most difference between Little League rules and our District 4 pitching rules. And again, all of these are listed on the softball website, on our District 4 website. So AAA division, maximum of 3 innings pitched per game. There is no rest required between games. So no, they can go 3 innings and then they have to be pulled. It does not have to be consecutive. In the major division, a maximum of 12 innings pitched per game and during a day. 1 day of rest is required if a pitcher pitches more than 6 innings in a day. There are no limit to the innings pitched per week. Now, this is important, and this is something that many times managers don't quite understand, but if a pitcher pitches 5 innings, fewer than 5 innings in a game for majors, they can pitch up to 12 innings the next day. If, however, they pitch 5 or more innings in a game, they may only pitch up to 4 innings in the next game. And it doesn't matter the number of days in between the games. Seniors, maximum 12 innings pitched per game. No days of rest are required in seniors. Here we have a similar rule, but 1 inning more as we did in majors. If fewer than 6 innings are pitched, you can pitch up to 12 innings the next game. Unless that next game is the same day and you're only limited to 12 innings in a day. If 6 or more innings are pitched in a game, you may only pitch up to 5 innings the next game, no matter the number of days in between. Okay, all other pitching rules are the regular season book rules. Okay, let's see if we have some questions here. Okay, can teams have more than 3 coaches on the roster to allow for vacation as long as they only have 3 coaches at the tournament games? No, this is a case where your regular season manager and your 2 regular season coaches are your manager and your coaches. All-Stars allows you to make temporary coaching changes, but not in TOC. So in minor softball regular season, we had coaches pitching. Is that still going to happen in TOC minor softball? No, it will not. We have only kid pitch, and if they walk everybody, they walk everybody. Clarifying for baseball, a pitcher may leave the mound to play another defensive position and then return to the mound subject to inning limitations as long as they don't sit on the bench between mound appearances. So this is baseball. If you have major or minor baseball, a pitcher who leaves the mound may not return to pitch. In intermediate and juniors, a pitcher who leaves the mound but stays in the game defensively and does not sit on the bench at any point may re-enter the game as a pitcher once. Does the pitch log rule apply in TOC? No pitch log, then only 20 pitches per player. So this is mandatory that all coaches will carry a pitching log with them, that it's in their binder. At the end of the game, the scorekeeper or the tournament director or the pitch counter will enter the number of innings pitched, softball, the number of pitches pitched, baseball, and they will sign it. They will have both managers sign it. That remains in their binder. So every time a coach comes to a game, they will have that binder. If a coach shows up, manager shows up at a game without a binder, they will not be allowed to play, period. What was rule on leading off? I'm assuming this is in reference to softball. So in softball, a player when the pitcher has the ball in the circle, and the pitcher is not attempting to make a play, the player must advance or retreat, and they must get on a base. They must then stay on that base until in the minor division, the pitch is pitched and the pitch reaches the batter or is struck. Only at that point may they disengage from the base. In majors and above softball, it's when the pitch is actually released by the pitcher. At that point, the player on the base can disengage. Okay, I think that covers us for our chat. So let's move on here. Now let's cover All-Star Tournament rules. So remember, if there's something that that gets mixed here, as Don said, we're going to be posting this on the website. So All-Star Tournament rules. Here we play by the Little League official playing rules and regulations, except where noted in the tournament rules and guidelines. And that kind of comes towards the end of your book. Again, no local rules, no interleague rules, no manager agreements are allowed in the All-Star Tournament. And ground rules do apply for a particular field, and they must be reviewed at the plate meeting. So know that we play by Little League regular season rules, except for where the tournament rules and guidelines are different, are changed. And so that's what I want to go through now to emphasize with you those changes, how it's different from regular season. So again, unless I note it, these rules apply to all levels of All-Star Tournament, both baseball and softball, all divisions of play. So remember, refer to your tournament playing rules. As an umpire, I highly recommend just go through that chapter, read it through. Okay, number of coaches. A team may have a manager and up to 2 coaches, no matter the number of players on the team. And the reason I write that is in the past, you were limited on the number of coaches based on how many players you had. No longer the case. All levels, no matter how many players you can have a manager and 2 coaches. Number of players, here's different than regular season. And this is, you cannot begin a game, you cannot continue a game with fewer than 9 players. So you have to have 9 all the time. Baseball, we use RST, tournament. It is a requirement. 60-foot diamonds should be marked Little League, 70 and 90-foot diamonds, they should be marked Senior League. But again, don't refuse to play the game or allow the game to be played if those type of baseballs aren't provided. Softball, and I want to emphasize something here with softball, and I want you to sort of get this in your head. In softball, you have 8-10 division, you have 9-11, you have 10-12, which is Little League, you have juniors, seniors. It's the 8-10 division that's going to be different from all other divisions on a number of rules. And so when you have a 9-11 division, it's going to play the rules that are at the higher divisions. So softballs, you're only going to use an 11-inch softball in the 8-10 division. All other divisions, you use a 12-inch softball. Use of an illegal bat. In the regular season, player uses an illegal bat, they're just simply out. Now the rule changes. If a batter steps in the batter's box with an illegal bat and it is discovered before the next batter steps in, the player is out unless the defensive manager accepts the outcome of the play, and both the player and the manager are ejected. So please take seriously the checking of bats before the game. Some of us have had this very instance. The very first batter of an all-star game came up with an illegal bat, and we had to call her out. We had to eject her and the manager. And if you're ejected, you also don't get to play your next game. What's the onus? The onus is on the manager for their bats. But listen, you as an umpire, take that seriously. Check all the bats. When you're checking the equipment, if you see a bat in the dugout, make them bring it out. If they say, oh, we don't use that bat, make them bring it out. The team also loses one adult base coach for the remainder of the game. The illegal bat will always be removed from the game. It is a safety issue. All divisions except for senior baseball and softball, we are using a continuous batting order. Mandatory play with a continuous batting order in all-stars, juniors and below. So everybody but seniors. All rostered players in uniform at the start of the game will be in the batting order. That is the mandatory play. There are no defensive mandatory play requirements. A manager can have a player on their team who's in the batting order each time, bats when they come up to bat, and never goes out and plays defensively for a single game. That is legal. Players may be entered or re-entered defensively anytime during the game, and an improper batter will be considered simply batting out of turn. Umpires will not track defensive substitutions. Mandatory play with the continuous batting order. What if you have a late arriving player? If the manager chooses to play that player, they will be added to the end of the batting order. Know that you as umpires, if you're at your plate meeting and a manager said, this is why you always ask, are all these players here in your dugout, in uniform, and are going to play? Many times you'll have a manager who says, oh, number 32 is not here yet, but they're going to be here in 10 minutes. Cross their name off. Cross their name off. If they come late, the manager can add them. Then you'll add them to the batting order. A player who must leave the game for any reason will have their place in the batting order simply skipped over. It's not recorded as an out. The player may return and will go back to the original spot in the batting order. A player unable to complete their at-bat appearance for whatever reason, injury, ejection, illness, the next player in the batting order will take his or her spot and will assume their existing count. A batter who reaches base and is unable to run the bases due to injury, illness, or ejection will be replaced by the player who made the last out, or, if eligible, a courtesy runner. And this is where it's different for all-stars. A batter reaching base for the first time is not required to run the bases. A courtesy runner can be used in this instance if eligible. So it's very clear in the All-Star rules, Regulation 4I mandatory play and Regulation 2 at bat do not apply in the tournament. Senior baseball and softball. Bat 9. In baseball, you can use a designated hitter position if you choose. In softball, you can use the DP flex if chosen. There is no mandatory play in baseball or softball. Substitutions, seniors only. A starter removed for a substitute may re-enter the game once, but only in the same batting order spot. And a substitute, a non-starter removed from the game, may not re-enter the game. Run rules. The run rules are similar, the same as the regular season, same as our TOCs, except for one significant difference. Tournament does not use the 8-run rule. Tournament does not use the 8-run rule. So we use the 15-run rule, we use the 10-run rule, but not the 8-run rule. Time limits. There are no time limits in All-Stars. No time limits whatsoever. There are curfews, and heaven forbid you actually end up games this late. I hope you don't. Ending the game. Any game in which a winner cannot be determined shall be resumed at the point of suspension. Want to emphasize that. Will be resumed at the point of suspension. We'll get into that in a second. Regulation games called for darkness, weather, or curfew are complete if a winner can be determined. If in a regulation game, the visiting team ties or takes the lead in the top half of the inning, and the home team cannot complete its half of the half inning or take the lead, the game is suspended and resumed at the point of suspension. The game does not revert back to the previous inning. So even more so in All-Stars, if you are going to start an inning as it gets later, make sure that you believe you can complete that inning, because if play gets suspended and you have that situation where the visiting team takes the lead and the home team doesn't get to bat, we now have to stop that game. Both teams show up at 4 o'clock at the next play game, and they must complete that game. And then because there's you have to lose 2 games, you may have a team that then has to go to another field. So please be careful with that. Tie games. If a game is tied at the start of the 8th inning in Little League or below, or the 9th inning in intermediate juniors and seniors, and any subsequent inning, we have the batter who is scheduled to bat last will be placed on second base at the start of the inning. This is to try to get that game completed. And if you have senior division, you can use eligible special pinch runners or substitutes for that player who is going to be placed on second base. Foot in the batter's box, this will be enforced at all levels. So know if you're doing 8-10 baseball or softball, you may have kids who have no clue and managers have no clue about what this is. And so know that you've got to enforce it. Third strike not caught. Again, this is that point about the 8-10 division is different from all other divisions. So in 8-10s, third strike not caught, not relevant. Doesn't matter if the catcher catches it or not, batter is out on a third strike. All divisions above that, we do have third strike not caught. Courtesy runner only allowed in the junior divisions and below. Same rule as before, pitcher or catcher of record when there are 2 outs, and the courtesy runner must be the player who made the last out. In senior divisions only, you are allowed a special pinch runner, and that can only be done twice a game. In regular season, we do it each inning. In All-Stars, only twice in a game. Stealing of signs, all levels, considered illegal behavior. First time you warn, second time you eject. Protests. Protests are different in All-Stars. And so we'll go through how it's different. Again, protestable situations, the same as TOC. Non-protestable situations, same as TOC. Again, all play will stop during a protest, and the play can only resume when the protest is resolved. Cannot play games under protest. And again, umpire doesn't get to decide what's protestable. If a coach wants to protest the silliest of things, they have a right to do it. Now, they will make a formal verbal protest. They have to do that. Umpires don't do that for them. And it must be the manager. It must be made to the umpire in chief. Again, the umpires will conference, they'll render a decision, and the UIC will announce that decision. If it's unresolved, if the manager still believes that there should be a protest, the UIC will consult with the tournament director, who will contact the DA, the district administrator, Ted Boet. Ted Boet will make a decision. If the manager still doesn't agree, the tournament director or Ted will call Western Region headquarters. They will make a decision. If the manager still disagrees, it will then go to the tournament committee in Williamsport for a final decision. So know that this process can take time. Okay, the following rules apply only to baseball in All-Stars. The All-Star rules are the same as regular season rules when we're talking maximum number of pitches, days of rest, catcher to pitcher, pitcher to catcher, catcher to pitcher to catcher limitations, all of that stuff, same as regular season. Now, these are the following rules that apply only to softball. Pitching distances. Again, I want to emphasize 8 and 10s are the different division. They play by the 35-foot pitching distance. Everybody else is 40 feet except for juniors and seniors, which are 43 feet. This is where the rules are different with pitching. So let's go through this. In the 10 to 12-year-old group and below, for all of those divisions, if you pitch 1 to 6 innings, you need no day of rest. If you pitch 7 or more innings, you need a day of rest. Maximum innings pitched per day, 12. A player removed as a pitcher but remaining in the game defensively may return as a pitcher anytime in the game, but only once in the same inning as they were removed. And this is why Don was referring earlier. You got to be conscious of a pitcher who's removed from the mound. You got, or the pitching circle, you've got to make sure, do they remain in the game defensively? Check each inning. No limit to the number of pitchers used in a game. That's different than regular season. Junior and senior softball, this is easy. There are no pitching restrictions. You can pitch 30 innings a day, 7 days a week, and it's fine. Here, player remaining in the game, moving to a different position, they can return as a pitcher anytime in the game, only once per inning. And a pitcher withdrawn from the game defensively or offensively, this is juniors and seniors only in softball. If they sit on the bench, they can return as a pitcher. When can players disengage from their base? When can they lead off? In the 8 to 10-year-old division, when the ball reaches the batter or is struck. All other divisions, when the pitcher leaves, when the pitcher releases the ball during the pitch. Future stars. Some of you will do future stars. This one's quick and easy. So this is, as we said, for the 9 and unders and 11 unders. 9 and unders, future stars, play by the 8-10 baseball rules. 9 and unders, play by the 9-11 baseball all-star rules. So just go to those all-star rules, and that's where what you'll play. There are only 2 exceptions. We do allow coaches and managers to warm up pitchers before and during the game in future stars. And protests will be handled the same as in TOC. In other words, a tournament director will make a final decision. Okay, let's look to see questions that we might have. Just making sure I'm okay. If you call a runner out for leaving early, softball, how do you handle the other runners? Say the ball is hit, but if a runner leaves early, it is immediate dead ball. How would I handle this situation? That's a great question. In softball, if you judge a runner to be leaving early, it is an immediate time. It is considered a no pitch. So what you do is you come up straight, tall, and loud, and you call time. And generally play will stop. But if the pitch has been made and players, they hit it, everybody can be going wild. You will stand there with your hands up, walking into the infield, screaming time until everybody sees you. You will then announce runner left early or circle violation, runner is out. Your home plate umpire should then probably announce no pitch and make sure that everybody knows everybody else returns to their base that they were at. What do they mean by unless the defensive manager accepts the outcome of the play? So consider this. You have a player step in with an illegal bat, and that player hits a single and gets on base, and it's discovered that they have an illegal bat. Well, the player is going to be out. So that player will leave the base, you get an out. But what happens if that player steps in with an illegal bat and they hit into a double play and 2 outs are made? Then the manager will accept the outcome of the play, a double play, 2 outs. However, the rest of the penalty still holds. Both the manager and the batter will be declared out, will be ejected from the game, and that team will lose an adult base coach. What happens if they bat out of order? That's something I don't want to go through right now, but batting out of order in all-stars will be handled the exact same way it's handled in regular season. And what I would suggest you do is you find that in the rule book and read through it, because there are a variety of scenarios of who is out, or if a batter is simply replaced, or what. We will have Jim expand on meaning of how the manager may decide to, okay, just did that. I think that's it, Don.
Okay, Jim.
So let me stop screen sharing.
Okay, I'm going to figure out how to share my screen now. And sorry, I wasn't keeping up with Jim as he was going. Before we talk about tournament umpire procedures, I want to make a couple quick comments about rules, right? You may be asking yourself, gee, that was a lot of stuff. There's a lot of rules. Yes, there are, but two things. As an umpire, remember, we don't make the rules. Our job is to administer the game in accordance with the rules. So for you to be knowledgeable enough to know how to do that, you've gone a long way by participating tonight in this session. Jim suggested reading the tournament rules in the rule book and referring back to these materials, which will be available to you, is really a good place to start. The other is, our job as umpires is not to explain the rules to managers and coaches, right? They have access to all the same tools and resources you do. So remember that as you go into the game. Jim talked about suspended games. And then there was another question about, well, what about if they want to change out a coach? So just remember, right? TOC starts on a Friday night and it ends 8 days later. So, and it's a single elimination tournament. Things happen very quickly and there's no time to correct a mistake. And that's why things like protests are done, administered at the game site by the tournament director. And there's no time, for a team to be changing out game personnel. Each president, will assert what's the roster of their team, and we leave it up to the league to do that, and we trust that there's some sort of integrity in that effort for TOC. When it gets into all-stars and future stars, Jim said there's double elimination tournament, right? And games are sequenced, especially as we get later in the tournament. Things happen quickly. You play tonight. If you lose, you play tomorrow. So again, there's no time really to resolve discrepancies that happen. As Jim said, in a suspended game, the two teams have to show up at one of the two next game sites, and in enough time prior to that scheduled game to be able to complete their game. What he failed to mention is we also need to find umpires who will go and finish that suspended game. So let's say the game was in Alameda tonight and it's suspended, and the winner is playing in East County tomorrow. So we have to find umpires who can finish the game in East County, right? The best way to do that, of course, is the umpires who are on the game tonight finish the game tomorrow. Except you are assigned to that game tomorrow. You're assigned to a different game tomorrow. So lots of complications if we don't get things done, or if there are protests that extend lengthy. Again, remember, Williamsport's 3 hours time difference. So if at 8 o'clock at night a protest is filed, it's 11 p.m. in Williamsport, but you're not going to get to Williamsport to resolve the protest until you've gone through all the other steps, which means it's going to be dark. So it's important that we, keep things moving, we're effective, and we administer the tournament in accordance with these processes and rules we've talked about so far. I want to go into umpire procedures now. We'll go through this quickly. Again, if you have questions, put them out there and we'll get them answered. So we talked way back earlier about what makes for a tournament umpire. There's tournament training required of youth sports officials in California and Little League policies. This is where you find the links to complete that training if you need it. On the District 4 website, this is the home page, and it's under forms. You will go and you'll see the links to required training. As an umpire, I want you to be prepared with all the right tools. So where can we help you find those tools? Again, on the District 4 website, we have an umpire page. You got my face here and some faces of some other dignitaries, but we have a linked page for umpire manuals publications. So this page has been updated, and embedded in this now are the official Little League four-man mechanics. This page is a little outdated, doesn't show it, but if you go to the actual live website page, you will see the links to the official Little League four-man mechanics, and then we have 2- and 3-man mechanics for small big diamond. Also in there, you'll see this link, All-Star Umpire Training. That's essentially the material we're presenting tonight. Will be embedded in the page there for you to access. The lower right, if you've been participating in us in other of our Zoom meetings during the season, you know about our YouTube channel. We've had some 16,000 visitors. We're pretty excited about this YouTube channel. This meeting recording will be available on the YouTube channel, as I said, tomorrow. And lastly, as we kind of go around this page, the rule book. The best rule book is the rule book app. Free, automatically updated when changes occur. Get that onto your device and use it. I mentioned at the beginning that you're not a local league umpire, and we want you to look impartial and represent California 4. This is kind of our standard umpire uniform. That said, as long as you and the rest of your crewmates are wearing the same shirt, we'd like you to have a Little League umpire patch, or the old style, or the new unified Little League patch on your shirt on the left sleeve. And that you look the same and you act the same and you look good. These are kind of detailed prescriptive standards. But just like baseballs, as Jim said, in TOC, you play with whatever baseballs you get. So if you show up to umpire and your shirt's different than your partner's, hey, go umpire and have a good game. But please do not wear local league identifying insignia. Your league chief umpire is aware of where to get our California 4 logoed cap. The other thing that's important to remember is that you may be assigned to the game to do bases. But when you get to the game, your partner may tell you, oh, I'm injured, I can't do the plate tonight. Or worse yet, during the middle of the game, your partner gets injured and you have to take over the plate. So bring your equipment. If you don't have equipment, ask your league chief umpire to provide you with equipment for you to use during the TOC and All-Star tournaments. The most important things are the protective equipment, the chest protector, the leg guards, the mask. And for for male umpires, a cup. Those are the important things. The other things are something to keep track of your lineup cards, a pen to keep track of changes, indicator to keep track of what's happening during the game, and a plate brush. So bring what you have. We're going to quickly go through some things that you do before the game, during at arriving, and during and after. So before the game, make sure you know where you're going. You'll get notifications of your game site, game time, all that information. Contact your partner. You'll get their contact information. Verify that we're going to the same place. Some leagues have multiple fields. So if you say, hey, we got that game in Walnut Creek tomorrow. Yeah. Well, one of you might go to Castle Rock Park and the other's going to Bancroft Elementary. So make sure you've agreed on where you're going. Agree on what your uniform is, and then make sure everything is clean, pressed, ready to go. And lastly, make sure you're ready for that game level. Review the rules, review your mechanics. Show up early, and make sure you know where you're going to park and meet your partner. When you show up, if you're the first one there, go find the tournament director. Each game will have a tournament director. There might be more than one game going on at the same time at that site, especially some of the facilities that have multiple fields will have a softball and baseball game going on at the same time, or 2 baseball games. Find the tournament director, tell them you're there. Don't worry about the umpires. Find out what time they want you at the field, and any other situations about what's going to happen. If there are 2 youth umpires in a game in TOC, find your game coordinator. So if you're a youth umpire and you don't know what a game coordinator is, talk to your chief umpire. But basically, according to the rules and the agreements on how we're running the tournaments, we're allowing 2 youth umpires on the game in TOC, but your league must provide that game coordinator. So the best way is, the game coordinator meets the umpires prior to the game at the parking area and accompanies the umpires to the field. I'm not going to go over the details, but you can look in Rule 903D on what the game coordinator does. And we also have a video on our YouTube channel that covers the responsibilities of a game coordinator. The important thing to remember is that the game coordinator supports the umpires, and they basically will be with the youth umpires from the time they arrive at the game until the time they depart. Little League policy is we have to have a responsible adult who's at the game to make decisions about starting, stopping the game, or other things that will impact safety at the game site. The game coordinator is not an umpire. The game coordinator is not to be making calls. The game coordinator is not going to go on the field during the game and interact with game participants. They're only interacting with the umpires. Umpire pregame. You've arrived, you're in the parking lot before the game. Some of you may have done this during the regular season. I would guess most of you have not. A pregame can be 10 minutes long. Go over everything that's going to happen in the game and discuss how you as the crew are going to respond, whether it's 2 umpires, 3 umpires, 4 umpires. Who has outfield coverage? Fly balls to the outfield. What's a trouble ball? Ball that goes to the fence, takes the fielder to the ground, or near the foul line. How are we going to handle those? Who has fair foul? All the different situations. So you might be asking, well, gee, I don't know what all these are. So many of these things are covered in our training materials that are available on our YouTube channel. They're covered in our umpire manual that is on the on our website, or in some of those more detailed mechanics guides. Remember that you as an umpire need to be more capable than the skill of the players. So we get into TOC, those are regular season teams, right? So those are the same teams you umpired during the regular season in your league. They may be the champions, or they may be a second place team or whatever, but they're still a regular season team. So the level of skill is the same thing you've been seeing for the last 3 months. But if you get into an all-star game, or perhaps even in a future stars game, those players are selected across all the teams in your league at those levels. Let's take a 10 to 12 baseball team. Players on that 10 to 12 baseball team only need to be that age. They may have played intermediate 50-70 baseball during the regular season, or in softball, they may have played junior softball, for example. So the skill level could be different in all-stars, being hand-selected teams, the best players from that league. So you need to think through your capabilities when you get assigned to an all-star game, whether you know how to address these issues in a game of increased competition. Have that discussion at your pregame. Make sure your partner knows where your areas of concern are, where you think your strengths and weaknesses are. You're a team, work together. One of you will have strengths, the others might have weaknesses. You can balance those with each other. Review any special rules that apply to the game you're doing. Bring this handout if you want, or go through the rules. And then most importantly, decide if you're going to get a post-game meal out of the snack bar, or some other important event's going to happen after the game. You're going to go onto the field, stay together. One umpire should not go to the field before the rest of the crew. Get there 20 to 25 minutes before the game. It's supposed to be fun. Don't walk on, strutting on like we're something special. We're just another team in the game. Work together inspecting the equipment as we talked about. Walk the field. What I like to do is, if you get there early and the teams have their equipment out for inspection, you can inspect the equipment, and then while they're doing infield practice, you can walk around the outfield. Teams are now perhaps shying away from doing a lot of pregame warm-ups on the field. So you might come onto the field, walk around the outfield fence, the sidelines, and then go do equipment inspection. Why do we want you to walk the field? You're looking for holes, you're looking for problems, safety issues, things that you may need to rule on if the ball goes in that area. And then lastly, watch the teams in warm-up. You can learn a lot by seeing how well they play, how well they throw. If you're a base umpire, you get some indication that, yeah, the shortstop is a good shortstop and can throw directly to the base, but the third baseman has trouble. So you can kind of get a feel for how that game's going to go early on by watching the teams. Pre-game ceremony, the tournament director is going to organize a pre-game ceremony, typically does it this way, introduce the players. If there's any other officials there, they might, and they're going to introduce you as the umpires. The instructions to the tournament director are to introduce you as umpires, not as umpire from League A, League B, League C. You're just umpires. They may do the national anthem, Pledge Allegiance, Little League Pledge. Some may not. For whatever is happening, we want you to stand behind the batter's box. The focus should be on the players, not on you. Face the American flag, of course, if the national anthem, Pledge of Allegiance is happening. And one thing of instruction to remind folks is, when we're doing the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, the appropriate thing is the hand is over the heart, not the hat. So the hat's going to end up somewhere past the heart, right up near your arm. But so think about that. It's kind of a cool thing to remember. Starting the game. After all that pregame, immediately hold a pregame plate meeting with the managers, team captains, tournament director. Introduce yourself, introduce your partners. Get the lineups. I'm not going to go through the details of each of a pregame meeting. We have a good video on the YouTube channel on a plate meeting. Might want to review that. But get the lineup cards, confirm the batting order, substitutions, whatever. Check to see you got names and duplicate numbers, that you don't have any of the duplicate numbers on the lineup card, and confirm where the pitching restrictions are. Mark those on the lineup card. Most importantly, we need to transfer responsibility from you as the umpires. In Rule 301 says, you're responsible for determining that all equipment meets Little League standards prior to the game. We need to transfer your responsibility to the managers by asking that question. Are your players properly equipped? And you got to get a yes or no. If they get a no, of course, we're not playing. You must get a yes. Why is that important? Later in the game, you're going to find an illegal bat. And the manager's going to say, well, I didn't know about it. Why am I getting ejected? Hey, John, remember I asked you at the plate meeting that all your players were properly equipped? You said yes. We've now discovered where they're not. You're in violation of the rules. Sorry, you're ejected. Confirm any ground rules. End the meeting. Wish both teams well. And home team takes the field. Most importantly, players are in the dugout while this meeting's going on. All the players except those that have come to the plate meeting are in the dugout. Nobody's outside swinging bats. Nobody's out warming up. Teams aren't on the field. Just tell the manager, hey, John, can I have your players in the dugout? The game's not started yet. During the game, how do we keep this game moving? You as the umpires, stay away from everybody. Base umpires, between innings, you're out in the outfield grass. Plate umpires on the foul line, facing the team coming to bat. Hustle the players in and out like we've talked about. If there's some delay because there's changes going on, base umpires help out your plate umpires. Stay hydrated, and most importantly, don't go sit down next to the fence and pull out your phone. Focuses on the game, keep it moving. After the game, immediately leave the field. In TOC, not as much of an issue, except if there was an illegal pitcher, for example, they could protest up until the time you have left the field. Other protests cannot happen after you've left the field. So when the game is over, leave by the winning side. Go through their dugout or whatever exit is on that side of the field. Don't shake hands with everybody. Don't fist bump with the winning team. Be courteous. If they say, hey, good job, you can say thank you. Just get off the field. I encourage you to go directly to your changing area. If they have an umpire gathering area at the field or where you're parked, don't hang out the snack bar getting your hot dog. Ask the tournament director to bring the food to you. Have a post-game meeting. It can be 5 minutes. It can be 30 minutes. Most importantly, I want you to do 2 things in your post-game. Thank your partners for being there with you today for that game. Focus on the positive things that happen. Share 2 or 3 things that you really liked about the game. Your personal performance, the performance of your partners, or just players, something exciting. Focus on positive things that happened in the game. Ask for constructive areas of improvement, but do not focus on 10, 15, 20 items. Take 1 or 2. That's all you can get. And then I want you to think about at the end of the meeting, were you a quality, good teammate, a good partner on the third team for that game? After that, after all that's done, if there's still something that was a problem, like an ejection or something else, please send me an email or call me and tell me what happened at the game. We kind of talked about tie or suspended games. The tournament directors will know what to do. They're going to take your lineup cards, make sure it's all complete. They're going to bundle that with the scorebook, and that's going to be given to one of the teams in an envelope sealed to be taken to the next game site. Please let me know if there's a suspended game, so we can make sure there's umpires at that resumption. Lineup cards, you may not have kept lineup cards during the season, or worse yet, your league may have totally relied upon Game Changer and you had nothing to do with keeping a lineup. You're going to have a 4-part lineup card, depending upon the division. It's probably going to look like the one on the left with 15 places for continuous batting order. We have some instructions on the website on how to keep a lineup card. And each team will have a lineup card of these. So I'm not going to go through all the instructions because I encourage you to go through the guide that's on our website, but this is what a good lineup card looks like. And then during the game, you can refer back to this and see how all the changes are tracked. This is one way to do it. You may have another way to keep track of a lineup. Okay, I'm going to go into one last thing and then we'll answer questions about umpire assignments if there are any, umpire procedures and assignments. So umpire assignments, how does this all happen? Umpires have been nominated by your local chief. And myself as the District 4 umpire in chief, I'm responsible for selection assignment to all the umpires to all the all-star games. So I've delegated that to your local league chief umpire in certain situations. I've reserved assignments for all the finals and some semifinal games in all-stars. And I've delegated to Jim Rose umpire assignments in softball for all the tournaments. So he's coordinating those, and some in all-stars, some softball games have been assigned to local leagues as well. We have umpire scheduler, a web-based tool. Those of you who've been with us in the past know the tool. It's the same we've had for over a decade. You may get assigned to a game and there's umpires from different leagues, and crews may be, it says 2, 3, or 4 umpires. Heaven forbid it's one umpire, but it could happen. So your league chief umpire should know this information. They should probably already have reached out to you to populate this good information and to know what your availability is. And again, I'm emphasizing umpires are impartial. Only one youth umpire can be assigned to a game in all-stars. I got a spelling error, I apologize, but one adult must be on the game in all-stars. That adult is the umpire in chief, but a youth umpire could be the plate umpire, but the adult will still be the umpire in chief in all-stars. And we talked about the TOC exception. This is the umpire scheduler. The important thing is to know the link. If you're set up in the system, you already were informed that, hey, you're set up to go in and change your password. You can see we have a login page at the bottom. There's a page that shows the games that you're been assigned to. And then you can also look at all the upcoming games and look and see where umpires are needed. If you look in there and all you see is a league name and no names of an umpire, that means that game still needs umpires. You may want to sign up for that. So then you contact your league chief and find out, hey, how can I get on that game? There's always going to be changes, heaven forbid, rainouts. back in 2011, it rained the first 2 days of the All-Star tournament. We had to change the schedule on the fly. Hopefully won't have that happen. We may need to move crews around to avoid conflicts. So just stay flexible. If you want to add umpires, work with your league chief umpire, who can then talk to me about getting you added to a game. Jim pointed out that again, the website with rules. I pointed out where we find umpire information. Now on the website, we also have all the Tournament of Champions brackets. These are all live now. You find them by going to the District 4 website, tournaments, and then either to Tournament Champions or All-Stars. And they're updated after each game is completed. All right, so Jim, I've got questions.
We have three. The first one, I am a nationally registered EMT. Do I need to complete those 3 trainings?
So, great question. And I'm not, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but the training we're talking about, right, is concussion awareness. So California law says that anyone who's in responsible charge of a youth sports event must complete the concussion awareness training. It takes about 20 minutes. It's not an annual requirement. The safe sports training, the abuse of youth training is a requirement of Little League. And that requirement flows down from the fact that Little League is a participating member of USA Baseball, which also has a requirement being funded by the federal government as part of the Olympic Development Program. Federal law applies to abuse of youth awareness training. So you must complete that if you are a Little League volunteer. Again, you should have already done this if you were a volunteer in your local league. It takes about 30 minutes. I really encourage you to do that. And Jim, what have I missed? What's the third training?
The sudden cardiac arrest.
Sudden cardiac arrest is a one-time, doesn't have to be completed annually. Again, it's a California law that cardiac arrest awareness training must be completed by those in responsible charge of youth sports. So my answer is, hey, those are the guidelines we've been given. Work with your local league safety officer, your chief umpire, your president, as to what your league is requiring. Okay.
Okay. How many umpires are needed per game? 2, 3, 4?
So 2 minimum. If the crew is capable of working as a 3 or 4 umpire crew effectively, great, put them out there. Our younger players really love it when we've got more umpires on the field. The thing that's really kind of neat is when you go out there and they say, oh man, we got real umpires today. So 2 is the minimum. If you're on a game and there's only one name, I'm going to be contacting your league chief umpire to find out, hey, who's the second umpire?
Okay. And our final question, should the game coordinator be in uniform?
So the game coordinator does not have to be in uniform. Game coordinator is an adult from the league providing the umpires. And they just need to, when they accompany the umpires, they need to tell the tournament director, hey, I'm the game coordinator supporting these youth umpires. Again, I'd encourage they not wear any local league hat or anything, but all right.
That's all we have, Don.
Okay, I'm going to make a couple of quick closing comments. Thanks for participating. You know, we have in the next 6 weeks, we're going to have 200 baseball and softball games, and it's a significant number of games. It's many more than lots of our neighboring leagues have during this time period. We're going to start playing with TOC on June 7th, and we're going to end with we're going to end with the Senior Baseball West Region in mid-July, but we're going to go through state level games in softball and section games in baseball and softball. So when we have 200 games, you know, we need everybody's participation. So thank you for coming out. But if you do the math right, one game is not really enough. I really encourage you to do 3 or 4, and that will help out with us covering significant number of the games. All 12 leagues are participating in play, and all 12 leagues are participating in providing umpires. It's a great opportunity to be part of Little League during this season. So thank you for coming out and joining the